reading glasses.
So we're looking for donations?
Yeah.
I'd like to call the iBisbee Committee's meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, September 19, 2018. Calling the roll, Stanley Stern is present, Denise Love is present, Fred Miller is present, Rob Page is in Tucson, try to reach him too on the phone. Kathy Stone is present. Will Nathan is calling us by a phone.
Yes, he's on there.
Hi, Will. And Carrie Gustafson is present. Douglas Dunn is here as council liaison. And of course, Nina Williams is here as staff liaison. Is there anybody here for call of the public? Seeing no one, will move forward. Approval of the minutes of the July 18 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval of those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes for August 15th meeting.
So moved.
Kathy's finished. Is there a second, please?
I gotta clean it back on.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to now move on to item 3. This is a presentation. I got communications from both Larry Canton and Mark regarding a program that was being put into place. We're working with the U of A and SEGO, and I thought it would be very nice for a presentation to our committee. So, which one of you is taking the ball first?
Okay, I'll kick it off because it's kind of a two-step process, and I made a couple of handouts here for folks describing this process that we call the area sector analysis process. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you need one?
So you all might be familiar with targeted sector studies or targeted sector analyses for communities that help communities figure out what kinds of industries they may want to pursue. Well, this was this is that process. My colleague up in Utah calls it the eHarmony of community business matching with communities, and what it does is essentially matches the desires of a community in terms of its economic development wishes, and takes that and puts it into a model along with the criteria that businesses need to move to a particular community. So they've developed a scientific model that cranks out, actually based on some really good research, cranks out recommendations and results for communities in terms of the kinds of businesses that they might want to pursue. And it gets down to some very specific businesses. Right now, the model works at the 4-digit NAICS coding system, North American Industrial Classification System. So all the businesses and industries, and Larry can probably explain this a lot better than I can, but all the industries in the United States and businesses are coded. So shoe manufacturing would have its own code, agriculture would have its own code, making widgets would have its own particular code. And what our colleagues did up at the University of Nevada, Reno, was to collect all of the criteria that all these different businesses need, whether they need a skilled workforce, whether they need broadband, access to the interstate, things like that. And they loaded it into this model. So when they take all that data and mash it up with what a community wants to see in terms of economic development, it spits out this fairly high rigor and reliability, some ideas for pursuing particular businesses or industries. So, but the beauty of this process, this is something that could, in other jurisdictions, could take months or years to accomplish this kind of analysis. But this process that's been perfected over the course of the last 10 years by my colleagues from Utah State, University of Nevada, Montana State, and University of Arizona and Idaho, has perfected this methodology so that it takes only about 6 months for us to accomplish this in the community. And takes a steering committee, just like what you guys have here. This would, you guys would be the perfect, are a perfect fit for this process because you already have a steering committee and you know who the economic development interests are in the community. And so we're doing this right now in Wilcox. We just finished up with them literally Monday. Our last module we did with them and provided provide, and a job of the steering committee is twofold. One is to get the survey out to all the, to get a broad representation of all the economic development interests in the community. So you don't want to just interview or send a survey to, say, Main Street businesses. You want to hit all of the economic development interests in the community. And the second job of the steering committee would be to take this list that comes out of this process, out of the modeling effort, and hone it down to about 3 or 4 businesses that you would like to pursue. And then what my colleagues do, and what we do, is provide as much information about those targeted sectors as we can. You know, what they require, what the gaps in your assets may be in the community, or gaps in infrastructure. And sometimes the results come out showing that the match shows that it may be a particular business that's already here, but could be worthwhile expanding or duplicating in other parts of the city, for example. So we just had our last meeting with the city of Wilcox, and they've honed it down to 3 or 4 businesses that they want to pursue or expand upon, and the wineries are an obvious one. But that that really played out in the results. Agricultural pesticides and chemical manufacturing, that wouldn't go over very big in iBisbee, but it is, because of the agricultural.
Depends which chemicals.
Yeah, it's good at the interstate.
But it's on the interstate, and they've got a lot of agricultural interests up there, so we're getting ready to give them their final report with an in-depth analysis about the sectors that they've chosen. But they're really enthusiastic about getting the survey out there. So this article explains, this was done by Don Albrecht, who's the director of the Western Rural Development Center up in Logan in Utah State. He's been our point guy coming down and explaining this process here. And they have conducted this process all over the West, in southern Utah, Idaho, Montana. It's been conducted up in Kingman and Bullhead City in Arizona. So University of Arizona and me from Cooperative Extension, we're looking to expand this program statewide. And working with Larry here, we're going to be we're getting ready to launch this up in Grand and Greenlee County, and also in the city of Douglas. So,
do you know, has there been follow-up from the places that they've matched, quote, and then the city's efforts, successful efforts to attract businesses?
To follow through with that?
Follow through, yeah.
In some cases, yes, and in other cases, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But the second part of this is what Larry's going to touch upon, as to how, that's one of the things that we want to look at in terms of the communities we approach. Do they have the capacity to take these results and run with them, or will they just toss it up on the shelf and say, oh, we did this study? The other...
We like to do that as a community.
A lot of communities.
A lot of communities do this, yeah. Do that. They don't have the capacity to follow through with it.
Check a box and have a sure.
Well, we're like 2 for 0 as a group.
Well,
But I want to hear the other part.
Let's hear the other part.
Larry, are you
Ready for me?
Yeah.
I think the ball was tossed.
Okay. Contemporaneous with what Mark has been doing with ASAP, about, the first of this year, SEGO received a grant from, in Greenlee and Grand counties to do what we call the target industry study. And so it's really a parallel to what was being done with the ASAP. The grant in both cases. My back's to him too, that probably doesn't help, and I don't have a strong voice.
Is that
The microphones are on if you want to go and talk right there, or like either one.
I really don't want to do that.
Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, once we got the grant funding for the target industry study, my job was to start looking for potential consultants to do that kind of study. And so I met with several, came up with some proposals, and I was in the process of drafting an RFP for consulting services to do this kind of a target industry study. And what we concluded was we weren't very good at drafting RFPs, trying to dictate to consultants what their methodology should be and how they should go about doing their study. They're professionals in that area and know what to do. So we came up with and I did this, I hope you forgive me. This was the document that was actually done for both Graham and Greeley County. I retitled it for iBisbee. So you can take a look at what we decided to do was to identify a list of deliverables that we expect from a consultant. And essentially that was really to identify industry sectors that would be interested in locating in a community for whatever reason. Whether it's quality of life, whether it's supply chain, whether it's cluster businesses in the area, whatever the case may be, what would attract certain industry sectors to come to a particular community. And then to develop, once we've got that analysis, understanding what those industry sectors are, why they would want to come to a community, and the assets that that community has that they could offer to those identified target industries, to develop a strategic plan based upon that. It was in that process that I became aware of Mark's activity in Wilcox particularly, and so we got together and talked about that, the ASAP, and whether that could fill at least part of the role that we were looking at. And I got the results of the study. I called some of the communities that they've done the study for and got some mixed response. Kingman, very favorable. They're using it. Some of the communities in southern Utah, not so much. But what we decided in Graham and Greeley County was we wanted to take it a step further. We wanted to go through the ASAP process, identify the industry sectors that would be interested in locating in a community and that are in keeping with the values of that community. What the assets would be of the community, and then having that kind of database and understanding of what the community has to offer and what businesses they might be interested. But then take the next step, and that would, the ASAP will accomplish that. But we felt like in Graham and Greeley County that didn't get us to the finish line. We really need to, based upon that analysis, the steering committee develop a strategic plan that really develops the strategies, the goals, the objectives, and the tasks that will begin the process of really reaching out to these businesses. And again, I have no preconceptions of how that's going to turn out in Graham and Greeley County. My suspicion is it will address workforce service needs, workforce development, and maybe not. You identify an industry sector that you don't have right now. You may not have curriculum for workforce development right there, but you start developing curriculum so you can use that as a marketing advantage to say we've got curriculum in place that with you tweaking it, we can begin training immediately, training employees. It will include strategies that relate to the new opportunity zones that are coming out. It'll be strategies related to whatever the business needs are. It could be outreach to going to trade shows and meeting with those industry sector trade shows and meeting with industries within those trade shows and developing relationships with site selectors for those particular industry sectors, those kinds of things that I suspect, though I don't know, I suspect will come out of the strategic plan. And then the grant also includes in both counties some money to implement it. One of the biggest drawbacks of studies is at the end of the day, you've got this great study, you've got a great strategic plan, got all the data you need, but no money to implement it. So we were able to get money within the grant to also at least trigger some seed money to start up the marketing
Do you see this as
strategic
a
plan
two-step approach?
implementation.
One step, more working with Mark's
Yes.
group, getting their results,
Yes.
and then shifting to
Yes.
the SEGO approach as the second step?
Yes. And this is the way that lays out in Graham County. We go through the ASAP process. In Module 4 of the ASAP process, we bring in a separate consultant who will be involved with the other modules of that ASAP process, and then take the results of that ASAP, work with the steering committee, and develop a strategic plan. So there's some crossover time between the ASAP study and the strategic planning process, and then the strategic planning process takes us to the finish line of the actual goals, objectives, etc., to implement the
So
plan.
we're looking at roughly a year program, is that what we're looking at?
It's outlined in the outline right now for 10 months.
10 months.
6 months for the ASAP, 4 months for the strategic plan development. I think that will end up being condensed down to 8 or 9 months. The ASAP approach needs a month interim between each module. The strategic plan, at that point, when we were actually in the strategic planning process, we don't need that kind of time gap in the process. We can shorten that. But right now, we show it as a 10-month process. So I guess we're here today to just to introduce it to you. some food for thought, for some consideration, and hopefully for some additional discussion. I've had, it was Freeport-McMoran that in both Graham and Greeley counties from different funds gave us the grants for the studies in those two counties. In some discussions with the FMI folks that I work with in Graham and Greeley County, no guarantees certainly, but they are pretty hopeful and optimistic that if we did the same thing in Bisbee, and maybe even combine Bisbee-Douglas, separate studies, but combine them in one grant application, that we could get a favorable response from Freeport-McMoran.
Because there's a real difference between discontinued properties and operations.
Right. Yeah, there is. But their interest in being community-oriented and helping communities diversify its economic base is as strong here as it is.
So is the second step dependent upon getting a grant?
I think
You have money already in your grant?
No, we have to go after a grant. And Seago, since we did those two grant applications, would be certainly willing to be the point on submitting the grant to FMI.
So the application would be from Seago going forward to Freeport if we...
Doesn't have to be, but we certainly volunteer it to be.
Right. Well,
And we manage the grant in both of those. We're not the leaders or the guiders of the grant, it's the local community, but we manage it through the process. And it is a three-part process. It's study, strategic plan development, and then implementation.
Okay, let's open it up for
I
questions for the
have
guys.
a couple observations. I came here tonight wondering why we were continuing as an iBisbee committee, because I think we lost our purpose.
Me too.
ULI came and did a great kind of study and suggestions similar to this, and we let that drop. Then we tried a strategic plan where we took your kind of ideas document, the ULI, I pulled them all together, made kind of a shopping list of this is what we'd like to do, and from that we wanted to do like a 2 to 3 year tactical plan. That fell apart. The Arizona Local First, I think it wasn't on a really solid foundation for us as a group of the 64 people that were surveyed, and we were trying to narrow it down in just to one area of building a more cohesiveness in our business community. That was shot down. As a group, I think it's kind of exciting to see this, but we have a really poor track record with this. We can try again.
Well, and I think that's why the development of the strategic plan is so essential. Until you have a really concise, clear roadmap of real activities you want to engage in.
Now, your strategic plan, how far out are you looking with that?
In those two counties?
Well, like,
Oh,
When you talk
in terms
about
of
strategic
the
plan.
planning process, it'll be a 5-year plan.
okay.
And obviously, if it's successful, it will be tweaked every year to
Yeah, 'cause
reflect
I've
current
got two.
conditions.
Strategic plans, but couple it with a tactical plan, which is like 2
Right,
years or something.
right. And then the real key is, and it is with every community, and some have it, some don't, is to empower someone in the community to really run with the strategic plan and do things in compliance with the strategic plan. And they may be little steps. For example, things like just reviewing the zoning ordinances and making sure that they're compatible with those industry sectors that you've identified might be interested in locating your community. Make sure that the zones are
Well, that was another
applicable
effort
to
we
them.
had, was to develop a toolkit, and that fell apart, so we're like 4-0 right now.
And in going to trade shows with those industry sectors and starting to meet with the real players in site selection for those particular industries.
I think I'd love to give this a try, but I think we have an inherent weakness that we work. We're all volunteers in the community. We've all absorbed a lot. And it's sort of the time commitment element. And you're saying take the ball and run with it. That's where we kind of start to dribble away.
And Mark and I had this conversation just a few minutes ago, and that, for example, Greene County has an economic development coordinator. And there's no question in my mind that he's going to run with it. Once the plan is in place, he'll run with it. And there's no question in my mind that Greenleaf will put some money towards implementation. There will be that seed money coming from the grant, but to sustain it, there have to be additional funds. Graham County has an economic development corporation. They have strong leadership in that, but they don't have a single person designated to really implement something of this nature. So while we're going to go through the process in Graham County, I had that concern that it may not be implemented at the end of the day. I have some concern here. I'm not sure iBisbee is ready to really go through the process and task someone and empower someone to take the strategic
I
plan.
think one of the
and
things that
implement
we
it.
have to look at, and I want to go around the table and get everybody's thoughts, is that the city is financially not well. It does not have an economic development person.
Right.
It does. So when it was interesting in your presentation, you mentioned trade shows. My business head said, "Who's going to pay for the transportation and all that to the trade shows?" Thinking, we just don't have the resources available to make it work. I don't see, and I want to go around the table. I don't see any downside risk at this point in taking this project on, but let's go around. Denise, what do you think? I realize we've not reviewed the papers.
No, I think it's something that we should explore. It's worth a shot. And
Or just ban.
I mean, I think it's an interesting concept, and I like it. It's something that we've not really seen quite like this, like with a computer program that you stick everything in. And I don't know. I think we should try it, but I don't know about like finding the one person to take lead and go with it. It's going to be hard to find somebody to do that.
There may be grant opportunities, though, to hire somebody like that, at least on a, for a short-term basis through the Economic Development Administration. We're actually looking, in my shop, we're looking at a EDA, Economic Adjustment Assistance Program grant that would help us increase our capacity to take this program, this ASAP program, statewide. And we're going to be working with two other COGs, Northern Arizona COG and Central Arizona COG, Larry's counterparts up in those parts of the state too, because those areas are designated as economic development districts. They have their sets in place, just like SEGO does, has their comprehensive economic development strategy in place, and that's a requirement for any EDA funding. And I've just, my eyes have been opened in the last few weeks to the possibilities of how that funding can help small communities like Bisbee. I'm not positive, but there's a high potential that kind of funding could help fund a consultant for a couple of years, or a director, an economic development director, to take, especially if you have something to show them, i.e. the strategic plan in place. You just don't have a person to run with it.
I think maybe one of the factors that's been missing is we've sort of just been, here's an idea, go for it, little group.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, great, flounder, flounder, flounder.
Well,
But if we have your support on this, which would be an investment, I think it could potentially bring us back to a purpose that we could be very positive with. Because really the last year or so, we've just been talking about ideas and individually going off and doing stuff.
Well, Kathy, what do you think?
I think it's probably worth looking into. I mean, we're sort of stuck right now, I think. I would be interested in seeing I don't understand all the detail, and I'd be interested in seeing the surveys and the questions, and, because Bisbee's kind of got this weird idea that if we get a tennis racket assembly plant, that we're going to be rich. I mean, that's what I hear from people. We need an assembly sort of, and that's so totally not what ULI said. So,
Well, that's what the survey, that's what makes this process valuable, is that it's based on the criteria of a business and the desires of the community.
right.
So,
and one of the flaws of economic development is that very thing. Even economic developers are always chasing that shiny object, whether or not they have a real chance of getting it. And if you really can focus on, that doesn't mean you exclude other industries, but if you can really focus your energy on specific industry sectors that you're pretty confident would have a good reason to want to at least look at Bisbee for location, it makes more sense. And you really reduce your effort to just focus on those.
And I'm
Fred,
gonna,
what do you think?
Well, I like the idea of the first part, because I like to throw it all into the mix and see what comes out and see what actually is compatible and see whether that's coherent with what the LI said to us. I also like it because Bisbee is in an opportunity zone that was put in place by the Trump administration about a year ago, something like that. Designated, there was places designated throughout different states as opportunity zones, and those
Our whole city is an opportunity.
no,
zone.
our whole city's not. Whole Bisbee is not. It's from Warren on.
I checked it out this morning and I was told that the whole city was, okay.
Now I looked at the map.
Okay,
Anyway, it looked to me like the map was stopped at, like at a traffic circle and everything.
interesting.
San Jose and Warren, but not Bisbee. But
Interesting.
we can check that out.
Yeah, because I
An
had a
opportunity-
conversation about it this morning, so,
Yeah.
okay, we'll talk.
An opportunity zone is simply, it's a shield for investment, basically. It's a way to stash some money for investors, that they get a return on their investment that is significantly higher than they would, say, in bonds or something like that. And there's very little risk. It's one of the Trump goodies for wealthy investors who can put money into stuff. But anyway, we can use that to our advantage. So I'm interested in the process, what do you call it?
Area sector analysis.
Yeah, I'm going to call it the blender analysis. So I'm interested in that. The other part, I'm just not sure. I mean, if we go through this process, we can estimate that we obviously would have to look for money, because we've been stymied for 4 years for our committee. I mean, we've done individually and together, we've done quite a few things that have resulted in pretty much a zero, except internally in terms of bed tax increases and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's a really interesting idea. I like data stuff. I really do. It's a very firm foundation to build on, as opposed to ideas about stuff.
It's hard numbers to look at.
Yeah, it's something. There's some real stuff there. So.
And that's pretty economical too. I think it would be under $4,000.
Will,
Yeah.
what is your idea?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I have the gist of it. And I didn't catch all of it, but I did catch the part about the opportunity zone, which I think is really interesting. It's buzzing in New York from a lot of my investor friends here. But I'm not sure that wasn't what we're going around the table talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of the possible action, I'd love to see just some more thoughts written out. I don't have enough information, but I think it is worth looking into.
Mark, is there any cost involved to this, to the city?
Well, for the ASAP, the area sector analysis process, it's about $4,000 that covers travel, and it's probably going to be less than that because we would handle the first 3 modules and not require our colleagues to come down from Utah State. But the model, it's running the model itself is $1,500, and then it's just covering travel for our colleagues coming from Tucson and from Utah. So it's worked out, for Douglas, it's worked out for about $3,700.
So 4 is the figure.
Yeah, just for our portion of it.
Right.
But the strategic planning that Larry's talking about, that's why he's presenting it as a grant opportunity as well, because that's going to be a little bit more, bringing in a consultant and.
It's going to be about 13,000 on top of it.
About what, Larry?
About 13,000.
13,000?
And then the one thing about this process, if I might stand, that's different than what's happened in Bisbee in the past, and I've been part of a lot of these other ideas and efforts here in the city, is that those have been pretty much one-offs. They come in, somebody comes in, presents an idea, here's our idea, see you later. This process that Larry and I are talking about is spending, continuing with this group for at least 10 months, if not a little bit longer. It's a 10-month process that, you know, every month, something's gonna be delivered to you guys, and you're gonna have to act on it. So it's not just like, well, here's our ideas, see you later. It's a process, and it's gonna, you know, there's some longevity to it. And then how the city uses it, once we're done our parts of it, is wholly gonna be up to you guys. And that may be the pursuit of another grant that would allow the city to hire a community development director. I mean, it's just not economic development, but being part of the Planning and Zoning Commission here, I have seen, you know, how we're suffering through the lack of having a community development director here. And so that, you know, making the case for community development and having somebody in place for at least a couple of years may be something you could apply for through a grant, through EDA or USDA, Rural Development. So there are grant opportunities out there.
Doug, what do you think?
Well, we've had this discussion for a while. I mean, you were saying that this group has been shot down. I would say this group hasn't moved forward. There's been various ideas and things pursued. Certainly, you know, the city's prime focus has been tourism. We've been highly successful in terms of targeting, branding, and moving forward on that. And so, to say that nothing has been done is you know, we're looked at the model in that particular area. Certainly, the community development position with the city was eliminated before my time on the council. Certainly, I've been the continuing voice in terms of putting money in the budget for economic development, and I basically have lost that. I mean, this group did not come forward, frankly, in my support in doing that. Again, I don't know. I mean, the economic development budget quote was reduced to $10,000. I mean, that's
For the year.
For the year, right. For any, whatever. And certainly, we've got a council that wasn't particularly aware of what economic development is. And if anything, they had a negative connotation to that. And I don't know that, the recent election here, I mean, there was certainly, as a result of the study we did with Kimber Lanning, there was some criticism of our tourism program. And so, I don't quite know where we're at in terms of what, it always amazes me that when you go into a campaign for city council and mayor, one of the questions always asked is, what are you going to do for economic development? So it's always discussed at that point, but there's never any follow-up in terms of pursuing that, or any real understanding of how to pursue that. Having done studies like this myself, having been at one time held the position that Mark is in, that I've always felt Bisbee, frankly, does not have the resources for traditional economic development. And all the major factors of production we're pretty weak on. And so you're looking at other options, and certainly tourism is what has really worked for us. And certainly, if this would lead us to some other opportunities, I don't see, in terms of city support, that financial support that's going to be there. We keep saying, well, the city manager should do more, but the city manager has a very full plate, whether you agree with that or not, in terms of things that we're pursuing. And we just, this last week, had another discussion about the fact that we don't have, he is the acting community development director, but that means we don't have one, by his own admission. And so, if we can move forward with this body here has to move forward with it. Has to be the one that moves forward with it. I've been somewhat disappointed in terms of moving forward.
As we look at this, my sense is that this committee over the last 4 years has really only accomplished one thing, and that's the rebranding and the movement towards enhance tourism in the city. And we did that, frankly, in the early period of this committee's existence. We have flailed at other things, and flailing is probably about the best word I can use.
No,
Being yatta.
that's being,
No,
yeah,
no, that's-
flailing is.
Yeah, flailing.
Flailing.
It's flailing at a pinata.
And this type of project obviously is right in the ball court for Economic Development Committee, and no question in my mind. Whether we can get the $4,000 from the city council, we will have to see. I've got another thought where we may be able to get the $4,000. But we
Well, I think
need,
Freeport is willing to, as you indicated, Freeport has been willing to finance things like this. I mean, that's certainly their goal with the community.
well, certainly we can explore it with
Right.
it. Yes, Kathy?
You know, it just sort of occurred to me, it's like, yeah, we've had trouble getting support from the city, from the council and the mayor and the city manager. And it doesn't seem like the city's really positioning itself for economic development. They're hiring an HR director, they're hiring this expensive city manager, but they're not focusing at all on economic development.
They're not focused, and the only group that's focused is this committee.
Is us, and then they don't listen to us because, and so
Well-
it's kind of like, we're sort of the
Well, we haven't talked
unwanted.
with
We
them.
really haven't had
Well, that's
something,
Doug's job, is to
Well,
interface with
we really
the
haven't had
council.
an opportunity. This gives us an opportunity of meat and potatoes to discuss with them. Not Kimber Lanning and maybes and ifs and this type of thing. This is a real program. It's sponsored by the University of Arizona. It's got a commitment out of the University of Nevada. I mean, it's real. SEGO is in a second position on this to come forth with outside consulting help. I mean, the whole thing is in the ball court of this type of committee, without question. We need to read these documents that you've given us. And we need at our next meeting to decide whether we're going to go forward with this. And then we will either get an outside grant to do it, if we agree to move forward, or we will approach the city council. And I can't tell you that that's a sure thing, but
If it's under a $4,000 spend, it doesn't have to go to the council. I mean, it should.
well, we can certainly, explore with David and the city manager how they want to handle this.
Well, let me, if you were to pursue the grant, my understanding, Larry, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the hiring of a consultant that will help see this through in terms of drafting a strategic plan and getting the city down the road in terms of implementation. Is that right? I mean, this consultant.
Yes, that's the purpose of the consultant.
That's their job.
Yeah. So if you were to get a grant from Freeport to do that, there would be no cost to
But
the
with
city.
one caveat, they will supplement the ASAP a little bit.
Yeah.
From a consulting standpoint, in terms of the data.
The ASAP program is the one that gives
Identifying
us the lead, yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
step one.
That's step one.
Yeah.
And that step is valuable for our city.
I
whether
don't
it's
see
this
any
committee or
downside
anybody
risk in
else.
that step. I really don't. And if we can end up with 3 potential industries to target, then the question is our follow-through in the targeting of those industries. So
And that's where
to me-
SEGO would come in.
and that's where the SEGO grant comes in. So the combination of the 2 programs could make sense. We can decide on the SEGO part as we see the results of the first part.
I'm not so sure about that.
Okay.
Because of the time frame needed for this grant application, Larry?
Yeah, we'd have to look at the next round, but I'm not sure what the next round.
Are we talking about a grant application to Freeport?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
So we're looking at, and how much do you think that grant would be?
But we'd have to build that based upon our costs, but I can tell you in Graham and Greene County,
Give me a
both counties,
ballpark.
it was 35,000.
Okay, so
35,000.
you're in the next cycle anyway.
The cycle ends August 31 of 2019. We know what the cycle date is for Freeport, yeah.
the 4,000 can come under the social investment,
Right.
That's
which is a
right.
30-day turnover. But on your writing grants and whatnot, in terms of timeline, would this committee putting this decision off a month impair that in any way?
No, not at all. And in fact, there may be a way to do it in a two-phased approach. Get the money to do the data ASAP first, and then as it's progressing, and then if we get.
Yeah, because we have enough time to
I would
apply.
like to see them stay together, because this is always where we fall apart. We get information, and we put it in a book and put it on a shelf, essentially. And I'd like to see that we gather information, and then there's a purpose behind gathering it. There's some action behind it, there's outcomes, there, whatever you want to call it in today's world of grant writing. But there's action verbs involved, not just these passive, oh, we've got stuff.
Yeah, I'm having dealt in consulting, but always with hard-end results, not the soft stuff. You've got a hard-end result, Mark. Larry has got maybe a hard-end result, but at least it's worth a try. And to me, that makes some sense. Does the committee want to take action today, or would you like to, what would you like to do? Would you like to review these documents and do it at our next meeting? Denise, what do you think?
I think we should review it, or my opinion is, I'd like to go over everything.
Right,
And then feel a little more.
Kathy, was that your?
I'm curious, Mark, the surveys, are they like really lengthy surveys, or?
Yeah. A
I'm
little
just-
bit.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I'm curious about, is like what kind of information are we asking people to give us? Because again, that's what Kimber Lanning did her 60-some surveys, and then everybody decided that wasn't enough, so, you know.
But I think it was much more wide open. I think that there was a lack of focus on that, because it was just like this scattershot
Right,
across the board.
I'd be glad, first thing tomorrow morning, to send you guys a copy of the survey.
That'd be
That would be
I'd really
wonderful.
like
That
to
would be
see
a
that.
good thing for us to see.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
You could send it to Nina.
Sure,
Yes.
okay.
Will, what do you think? Hello, Will.
I think his train came. That's what that
Oh,
sounded like a
Oh,
sub.
was it waiting
That's
on
what it sounded like.
waiting on the train platform? Okay, that takes care of Will. Carrie, what do you think?
Well, I think that it seems to me this kind of builds off the
ULI study.
The ULI study, and if we get rid of all the other garbage and use that as a stepping stone for this and go back to that and then start with this, I think there's a bigger possibility of us really helping you succeed with it, or helping our community succeed with it. And then instead of going back saying, oh, we failed this and that and we failed here and there, that the ULI study was very impressive. It was, I think what impressed me most, it wasn't a canned thing. They actually came down and took information on Bisbee and came back with a report to fit Bisbee. It wasn't the report for Glendale. It wasn't a report for Flagstaff. It was a report for Bisbee. And it'd be really interesting to do this with that as the background to it.
Well, to see how it meshes,
Yeah.
see if it comes out with some of the similar results. And the questions in the survey aren't, do you prefer, what kind of business do you prefer? It's not like that. It's, if you had a choice between businesses that hired, kept their money locally or brought in skilled labor from somewhere else, which would you choose? It's an A or B kind of situation. That's the kind of survey that says if this, then that kind of conditional.
Would you send to Nina?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you
then
bet.
Nina will send to the committee?
Right.
So
And
we-
all I'd ask is that you don't distribute the survey out
We
to the
won't.
community
Yeah.
right now.
We won't. We will deal with in confidence. We
Yeah.
we
We'll do
understand
it
that.
in action.
Because that could kill us before we got out of the starting block, so we don't even want to try that. So wrapping up, we're looking at a $4,000 investment for the initial study. We're looking at somewhere between, I guess we're looking at about $35,000 for the second part.
If you include some implementation seed funding, yes, 35,000.
So we're looking for the second part, and just to do that 2-month part with the consultant, we're looking at 14?
Yes.
Okay, so 14,000 there. So we're looking at 18,000, then on top of that, another 20,000.
Approximately 20,000
Right.
for implementation.
So it's kind of a three-step.
I think, one, we appreciate you guys bringing this to us. That's clearly number one. It gives us something to focus on, and as you could tell, I think this committee is really kind of wrung out. It really is. I mean, you know, we just, flailing is a good word. I mean, we flail. What we'll do is make a decision at our October meeting, and you're both invited to come to that October meeting. This is not done in camera. Well, absolutely delighted to have you come.
Could be another meeting for you.
Well, and if in anticipation of that, I'll be happy to be here if you have some questions that you'd like us.
No, I
Just
think
specifically
I was talking
respond.
about both of you coming,
Yeah,
because what we're talking about is, obviously, we see the results of Mark's group, and then if the results are positive or make sense and not building tennis rackets on an assembly line, then we then move with dispatch towards Larry's group. So our timeline, your program takes how long?
Well, we can condense it to five modules. It takes 5 modules.
5 months.
Six modules as the max, and that's assuming that you need one meeting to hear about the whole process and see a PowerPoint on it, and then the second meeting to introduce the survey. But given how much information I've given you guys tonight, we can compress that into 2 modules into one, so that would be 5 modules.
What I'm looking at, I'm looking at the idea of being able to make a application to Freeport for the big money, so we meet their August 31 deadline of 2019.
That shouldn't be a problem.
That's what I'm shooting at.
I don't think that would be
6
an
months
issue.
of the ASAP process
Yeah.
puts us in a
Yeah.
very timely position.
Yeah.
And that actually gives the foundation for the grant application.
Yeah.
Without it, it would not be successful.
Just as a point of information, so hypothetical, so we decide to do this, will you be the contact person for this?
Yes.
Or you would? So everything would go
For
through you?
the ASAP.
And you would, yeah, right, that's all I'm talking
Yeah.
about, just the ASAP part.
Yeah.
So you would schedule everything, okay.
Yeah. Well, you guys already have everything scheduled for the meeting, so
Right.
we can, this would be easy for us to say, okay, well, we know that we're gonna present to you every month. Or if, you know, if you need more time, you know, Wilcox, we spread the survey out over 2 months because they wanted more time to make sure they got a good cross-section of everybody in town, so. But that's up to you.
That would probably, 2 months would probably be better for us, just in terms of, because we're gonna have to do the survey ourselves, so.
Right.
So we're gonna have to identify those businesses.
Well, one of the things though with our meetings is we don't get prep materials.
Mhm.
So you walk into this concept cold,
Mhm.
and that's a new way of working for me. Usually I can read up on prep
And
materials.
usually you have a board packet.
Yeah. And then you walk in with some idea of what's gonna happen and you have some background information.
Well, this one handout that I gave
Yeah.
you, this one-page summary will describe
Yeah.
each of the modules. So what is your meeting schedule again? Is
Third Wednesday.
third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday.
Not at 6 o'clock,
No, look up, Gary.
at 5:30.
Well, that's convenient, it's the day before our planning and zoning commission meeting, so.
Just keep you very busy during the week.
It's probably gonna be
Might
further
bring a
interesting.
sleeping bag.
I think it sounds like it could help give us the punch and purpose we need.
When we get the final Wilcox report, I'll be glad to share that with you guys too.
Good.
So you can kind of see what it all boils down to. Now, there's stuff in between that they received. I mean, they received a pretty sizable report on the results of the survey, showing all the industries and things that came out of the modeling. And then there was a little bit more, one part of the process is to take this list of, say, 50 highly desirable and compatible industries and have a steering committee, i.e. iBisbee, narrow it down to a group of 12, providing as much information as we can about those 12 industry sectors to the group, and then having you narrow that down even further to 3 or 4 industries that would then feed into the strategic plan.
Will is better.
One last comment, and that is, as I observed the Wilcox process, the thing that was most noteworthy to me was it was an organic process. It was a group of people who just came together and said, we want to do something. And so there was a high level of energy going into the study. As a steering committee, they were very energized, very active in getting surveys done. And so I guess my comment is, you may want to look at, not that you don't have a lot of energy, I'm not suggesting that, but to expand the steering committee itself for the study, to expand it to maybe a larger group, because a big task of the steering committee initially will be getting those surveys out and collecting. And so the more people you have within reason, the easier
We'll
it
create kind of an
becomes.
ad hoc
Yeah.
Will, are you with us?
or project-based
Yeah.
I'm here, but I can't hear what you guys are saying.
Okay. Why don't you do this, Will? Why don't you call me tomorrow and I'll go over what we did? Because what we decided to do is to hold off. Wait a minute, what is that?
I am 5.
Yeah, I heard the first part of that. I'll give you a ring tomorrow.
Very good. Updated low-income housing.
I heard it.
Just 2 5s.
Silicon Valley and San Francisco,
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Will,
That's your idea.
I think, got off, I think he was on a train,
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out. Okay, I'll follow up on that question.
Because I think he might have some.
He may have some contacts.
Well, or comments, because I.
So Larry and Mark, you're more than welcome to stay, but the key
I
thing,
truly appreciate the invitation.
the key thing is that we'll follow up, we'll make a decision on our October meeting, and my thought is we'll probably move forward, the committee will have a chance to review all the documents.
When did you get a set from Will?
Yeah, and I was gonna see, I think you have the one-page summary. I don't think the rest of the table got one, the ones in the back.
The area sector analysis overview?
So, yeah, that one-page thing. None of us got it on this side.
Do you think I'm hoarding them?
I think you are hoarding them.
Oh, look out, guys, look out, you're right.
Well, thanks. guys.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Right.
We appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming.
Thanks, it's very nice meeting you. And what I can do is scan these in and send them to Will
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna send Will a package.
and Rob.
And Rob a package, okay. Now, what I don't have then, hello, I don't have one of those.
One of
You
these.
gave them all away?
Oh,
I gave them all away.
there you go.
Okay,
I gave you one back. We'll share.
Got a deal. okay. I want to now move on to an update on the local first thing. This is just a quick update. One, the mayor has agreed to have a meeting with the business community, a listening session, which we talked about. Rob Page has suggested that it be done shortly after the iBisbee 1000 run, and that he thinks that the business community will be looking forward to doing things and looking forward to the upcoming business year. And his thought was either before or after the 1000 event, and then more we thought about maybe after the 1000 event. But have a meeting. Fred has volunteered to use his resources to reach out to the business community. And the one thing we have to do this time, and I don't care if I have to pay for ads in the local paper, but we want to make sure everybody is invited. So one, we don't get dinged, but more importantly, we have a cross-section and no one can say they weren't invited. So that's the quick update. From there, we will gauge what the interest is and then move to an ad hoc LLC to implement that.
Isn't there a list of business licenses or
There is.
something? I mean,
Nina, what's the deal on the business license list? Can the names be shared or not?
Yes, I think the names of the businesses can be shared.
Is there a contact names?
There is, but I'm not sure how much of that can be shared. I think only is the address
The address.
and nothing else, if I'm not mistaken, but I can check on
Would
that.
you check to
Yes.
see and let us know? So that's just a very quick update on where we are in local first. So the next step, which we asked for, will be done. The next one,
Well, So I thought, several months ago, and then last month, writing a letter or an article for the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Jose Mercury, I think. And kind of tongue-in-cheek and say, no, we don't want Apple to come to Bisbee. I'm sorry, we'd like the consideration, but here's why, because there's starry nights. It's kind of a satire thing. And then I couldn't put anything like that on paper. I tried lots, and I've got just kind of blocked. So I called up the San Jose paper and asked them about guest editorials or opinion pieces, and I explained, I had like 2 minutes, explained a little bit about what I wanted to do, and he says, well, you can submit it. Don't say, you're not national, you're kind of promoting one little part, and then he said, but go ahead and submit it, So I called up the San Francisco Chronicle and got pretty much the same thing. Yeah, sure, go on, yeah, send it in, Yeah, and put it in the wrong file. So I just had a writer's block about this. I just can't get to what I want to get to. And the one thing was the kind of satire, and it's just not working on paper for me. And the other one was, I was going to try to take a more personal approach, saying, the question about why do people live in big cities is of interest to me because I moved to this little town of Bisbee, Arizona from San Francisco, and blah, blah, blah. Why do people spend so much time in cars, and why do they spend so much time in living next door to a million people, and blah, blah, blah. That's not coming together so either. So I can't get to it, so to do a contrast. So I'm kind of blocked about this. And I don't, and partly is the kind of lukewarm response I got, yeah, sure, we'll take a submission and stuff. It's just, and I didn't expect open arms. These are busy papers. They're busy people at the papers and stuff like that. They got a limited amount of space and stuff. So I'm kind of at a standstill right now with this.
So the one thing we know, and I called Fred because I was reading articles, that the cost of living in these cities, Silicon Valley and San Francisco, has just gone out of sight. I have one of my former clients is working out there, and he's making a lot of money, but he says, Stan, the cost of living is terrible. I mean, just terrible. And what I think our attraction is, the more I thought about this, is more to a company who's looking for a facility where they can send their engineers to work on a project, basically to design projects that are needed, and they want their engineers to concentrate on it.
We're talking about retreats.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, some form of retreat or organizational retreat. It just strikes me that if we can get to it, and I understand what Fred's saying totally, but if we could get to it and get to the placement of an article in one of these presses, that may be intriguing. I'll talk to Will tomorrow and see what his contacts are.
I'm curious about what Will why did we think that this was a good idea? Why do you think high-tech people would want to come here?
We were flailing.
Because there's been several articles that talked about flight to smaller and mid-sized cities from the West Coast and East Coast too, of young professionals because they can't afford stuff.
Can't afford it.
They're moving to the
Are we talking about young professionals, or are we talking about companies?
No, we're talking
about individuals.
But now you can do so much work at home
Very
or wherever you're
Here,
living.
the internet is
No,
so
you can.
undependable.
You can, yeah,
What
you
do
can.
you use?
I use Cable One.
You're not downtown.
But my son is
Well,
off the grid.
anyway, let's not get into this. If people are looking to move out of cities, some people.
I guess I would love to see that article, because I
Well,
can't
just-
see these 30-year-olds wanting to live somewhere with no movie theater, no
Right,
bars, no
right.
nothing.
Or no place to drop off
Yeah.
their resumes.
I just,
But wait a second. What we may have, and I understand there's a technology hurdle here. I got that. But I also understand that Cable One has been dealing with technology hurdles.
They haven't dealt with them yet.
There
I've
are
still
other
got the same problem I've
Well,
had for 13 years.
When,
You know though, Kathy, this is really one of the premises of creative placemaking,
yeah.
of taking a younger professional set who want to leave the big, huge, very expensive cities that have a skill set where they can be somewhere. And it's not necessarily an online base. And we're already seeing this a little bit happening here. So I think it's a very positive.
Because you'd have to have a young professional who works for a company that allows them to work remotely. And the company would probably require that they be on site
Kathy,
in, once in a while.
Try
It
not
just-
to put up.
I'm sorry, I come from an
But try
IT
not to-
background and I just
hang on, guys.
don't see this. I
hang
just
on,
don't.
hang on.
Okay,
What is our downside risk?
I wanted to ask Will what he thought, that's why
We'll
I
do that,
really,
we'll do that. Yeah,
he doesn't even live here.
I
He
didn't,
lives in
I didn't, I
Tucson.
didn't have my glasses on, so I was in trouble. But our downside risk is zero,
I just think it might be another dead end.
and it may be a dead end. But we could certainly have an opportunity to try things. And this is something, there's a market out there. How it works, I'm not sure yet. Look, I was able to run a very successful practice out of Bisbee, Arizona. And when I first was considering moving here, I called one of my clients. And he was a major guy in New York. And he said, to the untutored, you'll either be a semi-retired or a flake. If we put off moving for a year, literally, and then we moved out here, and the funniest thing happened. I got more business when we were moving out here than I was living in downtown Chicago. And so I think there are some people who might like our lifestyle, Fred, I agree with you. There are some companies that might like this place for a retreat. And I think that we ought to try to figure out, and I don't want us to write things knowing they're going into the round file. I understand that.
Well, I'm good, I'm gonna keep at it. When I get something that's worthwhile, I'll send it around.
I think your idea of saying we're not interested in bringing Amazon here or Apple here is pretty interesting. I mean, it's an interesting lead-in, particularly with both of those companies expanding and finding new second headquarters and things. So it's got to click when you read the first
So,
couple lines.
Would you suggest we just take this off of the
Yeah,
agenda?
we'll take
and
it
then
off.
what
Yeah,
happens, it
It
happens.
doesn't need to be on the agenda,
Yeah.
but since we were talking.
That way you don't
about-
have any pressure of always reporting.
Right, we don't need to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, since
I'm good.
we were having these conversations, I thought we'd let it out to the committee.
You can go
Kathy?
down now into current events by members.
Hang on one second. I did talk with the investment banking firm in Phoenix today. Couple things to report. They have reached out again to the lady in Colorado, and they will get back to me shortly regarding her interest in creating low-income housing here in Bisbee. Cool. Number two, we are in an opportunity zone. There are two forms of ways that we can do things. The housing project provides tax credits that will pay for the vast majority of the construction. Those housing projects come through the Arizona Department of Housing or else USDA. There's another set of 39% tax credits. In other words, 39% of $1,000 is $390 saved on taxes. Those become, if you're in an opportunity fund district, and Fred, I will yield to you because you looked at the maps and I didn't. I was told the whole city was an opportunity fund.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it again.
But, I was told that by investment bankers and,
Well,
they
probably
sent me
better.
maps and the map I looked at showed the city. But Fred, you may have better maps,
I'll take it out and give you a drawer.
What this does, it provides tax credits for people doing dual-purpose construction. So you would have housing and retail as an example, housing and health, that type of thing. it's intriguing to some developers, but it only provides up to 20% of the construction costs.
Right.
So it's icing on the cake, but the developer would have to see a real market here in Bisbee. But I just wanted this committee to be aware, we are an opportunity zone. Even if Old Bisbee is not, certainly San Jose and Warren, you said are included in that opportunity zone. So it's something, it's a tool that we have if we have a development. I'm told that there is a developer who is looking at buying the property west of where I live in San Jose, which has got the same views we do. It's beautiful. I've been up there with a couple developers to look at it. That property is interesting because it has been subdivided into 40 different plots. And how you bring all those people together, that's up to the developer. But they've been hanging on for years without success. So that's just a quick update. Hopefully I'll have something positive to report on low-income housing in our next meeting. Let's move on to the roundtable for current events.
Can I ask you a real quick
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
Do you know the minimum acreage that they would need to build?
No, I don't, but I can find out.
Because I've got 10 acres right in this area that I was with the seller of. He's not a local seller. He lives in Tucson or Mesa. And he was asking about what does the city need? And he asked about retirement homes or low-income housing, because there is low-income housing across the street from him.
Right.
And do you know where Johnny Raby lives?
No.
It's the land right behind him, if you knew where he lived. So he's got all
In
this.
San Jose.
Yeah. Mhm. So
But
just
it's-
something to think about.
But you need to have someone who wants to develop it.
And, well, the seller may.
Okay,
It could be an option.
that could be an option. Now, I've got to warn you that it's got a point system to it using the housing authority, which we've unfortunately learned about. You have to be within 2 miles of a
I
hospital.
thought that was just the Catholic Charities one.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
Okay.
it's the state of Arizona.
But this is the tax credit one?
This is tax credit
Okay.
one, yeah.
2 miles.
2 miles from a hospital,
Okay.
2 miles from a shopping center, 2
Okay.
miles from a senior citizen facility.
That's right down the street.
Your problem is that it'll be the hospital.
Yeah, it is.
There's a library in there too.
Now they took it out.
They took it out?
You got one down here now.
And after we
Yeah,
now have a
yeah, now
library,
there is a library, yeah.
they took it out.
2 miles from hospital, 2 miles from shopping, and 2 miles.
From the senior center.
Well,
Senior
is it a hospital or a?
No,
Medical
no, I went down that path too.
It's a
I looked at-
hospital, it's not
yeah.
a medical facility.
I looked
It's
at, I tried.
And,
There's gotta be a fully licensed hospital.
Oh, darn.
Fred, I've tried to
For
twist
that
it every way I
reason.
could, let me tell you.
it's riches.
Yeah, it is
The
rich.
hospital's gonna be.
But remember, those tax credits are worth the cost of construction.
Yeah.
So that it's a big deal. Now, also, the developer has got to be experienced in developing low-income housing.
Oh, okay. That's not gonna happen.
That's another
Well,
criteria.
anyway, you can,
We can,
I mean, there's tax, there's tax credits available and it's an opportunity zone, so.
right.
Yeah, go through the opportunity zone angle.
Okay.
So, okay.
So how's the housing market?
It's slowing down. We don't have a lot of listings all of a sudden. They just, like, no listings are popping up, and the prices of homes and the land is high. Since last year, the sales have dropped, but the prices have increased on everything.
Maybe that's
The
what it
median
says.
price of the home and construction is, or commercial as well. Got lots of commercial sitting out there.
So it's slowed down.
Construction
Yeah,
has
it's
really
slowing
been
down.
hit.
Do you view that as a seasonal problem, or is that more than?
Well, at the same time, last year, well, it could be seasonal. I think June is always a busy month, I think, in my notes. In both
June,
years.
July, and August,
Yeah.
well, I don't know about August yet, but June,
Yeah.
July was pretty,
They're
I
busy.
think you moved 12 units, something like
Yeah.
that, 13 homes, something like that.
Mhm.
Building permits were pretty substantial.
Yeah, lots of rehab going on.
You had one, I saw you.
I have a pergola.
Kathy, what's going on in the business community?
just, next month, stair climb, and we've also got the plein air, competition, we're moving it to October, so it'll be on the second Saturday. And that's a 4-day event, so.
That bring you some business?
Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun event. There's artists all over the place, and
Next, we have our fundraising dinner the second Saturday.
I know it's the same day I have to do the plein air.
Yeah, but it's in the evening, so.
And then what?
Fred, how's lodging?
My lodging's good. You know, I've talked to a couple other business people downtown who are moaning about the slow month of September, but it's mostly retail.
Retail was slow.
Retail was
Yeah,
slow.
it's
The restaurant business still strong?
My business has been strong. I had the second best ever. I mean, last year was really a boomer year for me, and from January to through August, I'm within $100 of what I did last year at the same time. So I think that's.
We're talking about the restaurant then?
No,
No,
I
it's
don't
not
have
that
access to
large.
it, but I, we condensed our business to 2 days this summer, and it didn't seem to hurt. I think, because it was just the 2 days, we were certainly as busier than we have been in the past. We're only gonna add, Roka's only gonna add, a Sunday in October, so it's only been 3 days, and probably go to 4 days maybe, or 5 days, I don't know, in next February or something. I'm not sure what they're planning, but it'll probably be limited hours to October, November, December.
Carrie, we slowed down in museum or we?
Oh yeah, we're in the slow season. But there's a couple things I wanted to announce.
Sure.
I think maybe we've done this before. Chiricahua Community Health Centers is going to be investing $1.7 million to upgrade the Bisbee Clinic,
Wow.
and that should be opened next spring. And what happened was, and I think this is something that will impact maybe you a bit, from the original architectural plan and cost estimate to the opening the RFPs, it was 2/3 again higher. And I've heard this consistently with, like, our projects is, there are a lot of construction people that can't hire locally, and a lot of them are really now busy up there, and the cost of lumber and all the metals and stuff have really been hit. The other thing that we're doing is, we hope to have it construction completed probably at the end of next month and open by, we have to credential it, but open by hopefully January, is a pharmacy in Warren at the Print and Stitch building. We'll be opening a pharmacy there. And then in Grassy Park, we have another little extension of our Grassy Park project. We received funding to do lighting in the park. So we'll be lighting the building and lighting more in the park, and sort of a safety security kind of angle. And Al Hopper and his electrical consultant came up with just this brilliant plan of lighting the building but honoring dark skies. And then going to wired LED and solar.
Cool.
So we're going to be bringing that before the Parks and Recs Committee and then council.
Apropos the Chiricahua remodeling, I tried through 3 or 4 different people to see if they were interested in possibly buying or leasing the park area across the street from the clinic, because it's kind of a duplicate effort. That it's a little pocket park there on the corner across from the ballpark, and Vista Park, especially with all the kids stuff now. But didn't get any response.
Well, one of the things is we have just opened the Benson Clinic, which is a huge investment, and that's just starting to pay back. We are building a new dental and admin building in Sierra Vista. We are almost ready to open a second pediatric center in Douglas. We're getting our 5th mobile unit, which is pediatric dental for the county. So and then we just opened the Sierra Vista Pharmacy with the Benson and Bisbee pharmacies coming online. So we have all this investment, but the return hasn't quite caught up yet. So we're tight until that return starts coming in. So that could be the reason.
Because I thought it was a match, because
Yeah.
they're going to need some park. Anyway,
Now,
That's great.
would you put together a list, as mine is old and worn out, a list of the members of our committee with cell phone numbers as well as regular numbers, and also their email addresses,
Is that okay with everyone that Stan have your information?
Well, look,
Yes.
I would love
Fair
it.
enough.
I get
Fair
a I get a call from him. What's this so-and-so's number?
Fair question.
Yeah.
Now, I can share with all you a great number. The telephone number for the Cable One office in Bisbee
Yeah.
is
I know it.
432-7999.
Yep.
And that gets you to Deborah. And if you go through their crazy number, you'll go nuts. But if you really want something done, you call Deborah.
Okay.
She's wonderful.
And there are,
I mean, that's the tip of the day.
I just want
Sure.
to comment briefly, item 5, and that is that Jen Lurie, when she spoke to us, indicated that she was targeting San Francisco in terms of her, what she's called visit stay. And certainly it's very similar to what you're talking about in terms of how do we entice individuals who come initially to visit, but end up staying here because of the attraction. And of course, it was interesting that this week's magazine has an article specifically on those types of individuals. They're calling them FIREs, they're calling them FIREs, which is financially independent, ready to retire.
Is this the week?
This week, right. And anyway,
Give me that again.
Financial.
financially independent,
Ready to retire.
yeah, right.
I love it.
But anyway, that, you know, we have had some success in terms of targeting Portland, in terms of drawing people here. And certainly,
Seattle.
Seattle, I'm working with.
and so that is, you know, I would read, she repeated that to me, that is a focus in terms of this year, in terms of a focus. San Francisco is a focus in terms of her tourism promotion program, and the focus on, as she's saying, is visit and stay. So you're actually end up moving here. So that certainly is a way of, another way of another vehicle that can be used for what you're talking about here.
That's a good idea. I'll talk to Jen and need to talk to her about some stuff too.
Are there any other comments for the good of the order? City's running okay, Nana? You got it under control?
All under control.
It is her birthday today.
It's her birthday today.
Yes,
Happy
it is.
birthday to you.
Happy birthday to
you. Happy birthday, dear Nana. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
Are you suitably embarrassed?
You're 39 years old today, right?
No, I'm 20 plus shipping and handling.
I like that one.
I like that one.
Oh, that's great.
So are we adjourned?
We are adjourned.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, we haven't moved to adjourn.
We all did
I
it.
move you adjourn.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Bye.
Okay, so the other is usually.
Okay, well, we may have some meat and potatoes or we may not, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I got a lot to read.